Is that it for you? All right, cool. All right, without any further ado, let's bring up Lindsay Brandon. She's from Permaculture Canada, and she's here to enlighten your mind on things permaculture. So, Lindsay, come on up. She's a lot of fun.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for your warm welcome. I love Kansas. This place is beautiful. Endless skies. I was just saying that how clean it is. It's so nice to just see clean along the highway, beautiful green rolling hills. And so I'm from Alberta, so I'm used to that God's country kind of sky. Just love it. I want to start with something special. Someone real special's here. It is his birthday. We're gonna sing to him. His name is Scott.
Where's Scott? Let's embarrass him real good.
Scott? There he is. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Scott.
Scotty!
Happy birthday to you.
Yay! 25 again.
Right on. So, I used to do fitness for about 15 to 20 years. That's a bit of my background. I'll start there. Also done a lot in the arts, glass blowing, sculpture, casting, painting, all the arts, dancing, singing. I've been a performer for 25 years. And that all changed. A few years ago, this thing happened. And my whole career changed. And I thought, if this is the way that the world is going, where are my farmers at? Get me back to the dirt. I want to get my hands to the earth, and I just want to have a simpler life. So I thought, well, I'm going to take some more education. My fitness career has come to a halt immediately. I'm going to get some more education, and I looked into permaculture. I'd already been familiar with permaculture because I was in the eco-minded community living on Vancouver Island. There's a lot of people making their own food, making their own body care products, wearing natural fibers, supporting local was very common. And I had moved to Calgary at this time, and I was like, oh, Calgary, consumerism, it was called cowsumerism, right? Going back into this corporate kind of place. I thought, well, I'm going to get as close as I can to that world. So I took my permaculture certification to an organization called Verge Permaculture, online, when this whole thing shut down. And I wrote this song about that time. I just thought I'd start there. I play guitar and stuff, but I'm just going to a cappella this. I remember the world was fine. Everybody changed their mind. Everybody changed. Things don't seem the same. They'll never be the same. Wait it out, wait it out, wait it out. In the meantime, welcome to your mind. In the meantime, welcome to your mind. How much can you flow? How much you forget you know? And how do you refrain from judgment? Forget your likes and your dislikes. Throw away your choice. Oh, throw your voice. Time is now. The time is now. Time is now. Time is now. It was a real inspiration that whole time. I had a ton of ArmaGarden songs now. It's great. So I took my PDC certification, and even before I'd finished the certification, there's already opportunity for work. And I found a company called Food Forest Abundance on a Telegram chat. Somebody suggested, these guys are looking for designers. And I was like, oh, I'm not a designer yet, but let's try it out. So then I contacted them, and I had an interview, and they said, yes, join us. And I volunteered for a couple of months until my PDC was complete, and my design was complete in March, so that I felt legit. And I went straight to work. And I do have a background with digital arts, and I had done a lot of Illustrator, and lots of photography and video work, and it all tied in. Everything that I had done up to that point tied into this occupation. Working with people, working with wellness, working with fitness, meeting people where they're at. And the gardening background came from as soon as I could walk. Right, so gardening with my family. I remember my Uncle Rennie wearing his socks in the dirt, right? He'd have a big pot on the fireplace. He'd say, go get a cob of corn, throw it in the pot. And all of my relatives, my grandma had 18 children, so I have 63 first cousins. And this is like family reunion to me. We would do something like this. We rent a whole lake for our family reunions. So this is really nice and near and dear to my heart, this experience. It's very comforting, like home to me. So I got back into gardening, I started designing, and I really escalated quickly with the design world. Because of this digital art background, I was able to convey my ideas through design very easily and artistically as well. So each design, I could get a new element of a design, and I'd do little drawings, say of a beehive. This person wants bees, I put that in there. Somebody would like some sort of rotational grazing plans, so I would come up with a creative icon for that. And just really enjoyed the work, being a designer for about 6 months until I crawled up the ladder a little bit. And Food Forest Abundance gave me the opportunity to be a regional team lead. So then I was managing 12 to 13 designers, and looking at their designs and working with them and increasing the design aesthetics, we'll say. And that was a great experience because then I started learning from my peers and I started learning from their PDC education as well. Because, so when I say PDC, sorry if I haven't clarified, that's a Permaculture Design Certification. And through that we learned so much. Permaculture is a very deep subject. In short, permaculture, permanent agriculture. It's coming from ancient wisdom. It's coming from the people, our ancestors. It's coming from all over the world in different ways, depending on what the climate looks like. So we're actually adopting these principles, these ways to care and steward the land and grow food from ancient people. And it was coined permaculture by David Holmgren and Bill Mollison in 1978, which is the year I was born. Yeah, so permaculture, we look at the geography, we look at the climate, we look at water, access, structures, flora, fauna, fungi, soil. What else, Graham? I'd like to introduce Graham. He is my fellow designer. Partner in crime, yes, Graham Towerton. Stand up. Graham Towerton.
Thanks, Lindsay. So, I actually come from the home country where permaculture was started in Australia. So I first learned about it reading magazines that my parents had. We had a 53-acre farm in Australia. And we were growing crops like beans, peppers, cantaloupes, 5-10 acres at a time and losing money every time we did it. So we started looking at what else we could do to grow crops and be profitable, and that meant using things like tropical fruit trees, stuff like that. And so we started reading about permaculture. That was in my junior year of high school, and I thought at that time that I was going to have exactly zero opportunity to make a career out of permaculture. So I went and did a chemical engineering degree, did that for 34 years, and retired from that 2 years ago, and then started permaculture with Food Forest Abundance on the same day as Lindsay. So we shared that date of January 5th of 2022 that we started with them. And I've done a lot of design work. Again, I was part of Lindsay's team as well. So I've enjoyed that experience, and we're here to work on Tag's project. And with that, I'll hand back to Lindsay.
Thank you. All right, so team lead, Food Forest Abundance, that's where I stop. Next step, along comes Freedom Farm Academy, designed through Food Forest Abundance. This is a permaculture demonstration site. That's what brings me here. Tag Meyer found us, and he's already got so much going on. And it's so great. I'm super thrilled and super grateful that he's brought me here. This is my element. I love it. I'm so inspired. There's so many ideas coming from this. And make sure somebody's got to remind me to talk at the end about the new thing. Anyways, back to where I'm at. Freedom Farm Academy. So we have 15 of these now that we've designed. So that was my next kind of step in the position climb ladder. I was asked if I would be the lead designer for that and design 15 of these things very quickly. It's like, kabam! And we had Ghana, we have one. We have an orphanage in Peru called Awesomeage. It was designed. We've got South Carolina. There's like 3 in Texas. There's one that's a food bank, which is excellent. One that is focusing on the health of her forest and bringing that back. There's one in California. It's all about avocados. We've got doctors and chiropractors and yoga teachers and people from all different backgrounds and all ages with all sorts of different focuses. So Freedom Farm Academy is molded to the theme and the passion of the people. And every design that I do is. I'm always looking for, what does this person truly want in life? What lights them up? How can I weave that into their design for what they're looking for? Meet them where they're at, educate them, and then show them how to slowly weave in their community. Get everybody into it. Because this sort of thing works when we work together. So like I said, permaculture has a lot of different subjects. It also requires a lot of different brains, which is why I joined Food Forest Abundance, because when I finished my permaculture design certification, I was like, whoa, I can't do this alone. I don't have all the knowledge for all of these things, and I never will. There's no way you can know everything about permaculture. It's a community-spirited thing right from the get-go. It's great. Because it changes our neurological wiring of being independent and like competing with each other to collaborating with each other. And that's the age of Aquarius, and that's where we are, which is awesome. Because we're getting rid of all that fear-minded BS, belief systems, and we're coming into the new. Sorry, I'm going to be all over the place. That's just how I am. We also have a Freedom Farm Academy in Santa Fe. Now these guys, they studied with Bill Mollison, the grandfather of permaculture. And they have a permaculture oasis in the old town of Santa Fe. It's called the Garden Compound. You should look it up. It's amazing. What else do we have? We have so many Freedom Farm Academies there. But that's what I'm here for in the first place, is I'm going to be designing one with Tag. And Graham is going to be designing alongside me. And it's awesome. And so many things have come from this. So we've already walked his property 2 days ago. I have a ton of ideas I will not share with them because I like to keep it as a surprise. But it's really lovely to be, walking everybody's lands. Every time I do an academy, I've got to walk the land and I get familiar with, what's growing here already? And that's going to tell me about the soil. It's going to tell me about the quality of the soil, if it's compacted or not. I read the land and I look for water patterns and I see the topography. And I see how the plants are interacting with each other, what's growing by each other, what wants to be there. Because part of designing a permaculture food forest, which I'll get to, is working with nature, not against her. Not saying, I want this right here. This is what I want. It's more about, what does she support here? And also, what does she need? And when I say she, I'm talking about Gaia, Mother Earth. Which we're all getting back to in such a beautiful way. So one of the big elements of a Freedom Farm Academy is a food forest. Having food grow everywhere. This is the model that we're looking after. Get rid of lawns, grow food. Okay, lawns were supposed to be there as like a status thing. Oh, look at me. Look at my beautiful lawn. And then people are paying so much money to mow that, spraying it with all sorts of stuff. You all know it. We don't have to preach to the choir here about that. But what else can we grow? We'll grow food. How dependent are we on our food systems? And how are we just shown how fragile they are? So it's important that we decentralize the food system. And that's a major principle of what we're doing. Decentralizing everything. Decentralize your water. Capture your rainwater. Decentralize your brain from what you're normally told, you know, about like poisons and all that. How long have they been using poisons on the earth? Not that long, right? And how many people do you hear, oh, I don't have a green thumb, I can't do that, right? Oh, I got weeds, I gotta spray that, right? We have to erase these patterns in our brain and realize growing food is not that hard. Yes, you can. It's in you. It's in our DNA to be doing this. The disconnection from the earth is what we're trying to heal again. And this is a major focus of mine with Permaculture Canada. So that's my own business as I contract out to Food Forest Abundance as Permaculture Canada, serving worldwide. Is healing that relationship back to the land. There's so much depression and all the things I don't want to talk about. How do we heal it? We connect people back to the earth. We get them outside, get them in the sun, get their skin in the dirt where it can interact with the microbial action of the world. It does the work. It doesn't take that much effort to stand outside. I encourage people, this is the first thing I get people to do. I say, go out into your property. It's my Permine 101. And look around. And I try to guide people into this. How do you look for water in the land? How do you read the land? How do you see the topography in your land? How do I utilize that? How can I bring more water into the earth? How can I capture and store water? How can I make sure I have emergency water for my own use, for my family? How can I make sure I have food in a case of emergency? How can I support pollinator species? What can I do with my little piece of earth to increase diversity? Because the more diversity that we have on our land, the more species we have. And we can bring things back. Phenomenal project I did called Conjunction Gardens. This is the past 3 years of my life. Once that whole big thing happened, I fell in love with a farmer. Go figure. And we took 2 acres out of 200 acres, monoculture crop fields, full of glyphosate, and we turned it into a permaculture paradise. I also did research and development with hemp fiber, with Manitoba Harvest, who's the biggest hemp Canada, or big hemp company in Canada. Daryl McElroy was the gentleman, he's a Métis man from Manitoba, brought hemp back to Canada on a plane from Belgium. And he got 12 of his friends to unload it all once it was legal again. I won't even get into the history of that too much, but your first American flag was made out of cannabis. I'll just say that. Lots of uses for that. So those 3 years, I was trying to discover how many uses do we have for hemp? And we were using really archaic methods. Everything I did there was super archaic. We had like all the old tools, right? It's his grandpa's farm, so they had everything, right? Old scythes and things like that. We were building pieces of wood with nails in it and slamming the hemp against it, trying to make rope and just see what it's like to do all these things and all the effort that it took and understand this completely. We were chipping it up. We were trying to make blocks for hempcrete. Because that was one of the things when that whole thing happened. I was like, okay, I also want a hempcrete yurt in the woods, and I'm going to fill it with my instruments and disappear forever. So I didn't end up making the hempcrete hut, but a friend of mine did in Trochu, and I got to see it last month. She calls it the Hemple. And she put a hemp addition onto her house with found windows and stained glass and beautiful glass blocks and a wood stove, and it's beautiful. She's got this addition on her house. She didn't ask for permission. They built it. It's wonderful. So that was a real glory day for me to show up and stand in a room that was built out of the hemp that I grew. Super cool. We also pressed the hemp seed for oil, which is delicious, nutritious, and super high in nutrient content and value. You could rub it on wood and varnish it and lick your fingers if you wanted to. You could use it on your hair and skin and drink it. I also gave the same friend a lot of the hemp. We were taking off, all the brush, all the leaves and things like that, and then we were taking the stalks and we used those the next year to stake our garden, build fences. We wove a fence 50 by 50 long that could withstand Alberta winds, believe it or not. Like, we were out on the prairie. And she made hydrosol out of that and really healed her. Her partner has IBS, so he was drinking the hydrosol, heals his guts. She made shine. Lots of kinds of shine. It's quite delicious. So, long story short there, hemp is like super useful. I'm not too sure if it's legal here for you guys to grow or not, but where I'm from, it is. Going back to the garden. So we went and we designed a garden and changed the design every year. And I would do concentric patterns because I'm doing perennial planting. So that means I'm planting a plant that comes back year after year after year. And I created these circular gardens. And each year I could add on to them. And they get bigger and bigger. And it took very little effort, once those were planted, for them to come back. Between the rows, I was putting down straw. You never want your soil open to the sky. Okay, rain falls on it, it creates compaction. It blows away. You want to cover it up. And in your vegetable garden, you want to use straw because it'll create a bacterial dominant situation for your vegetables. Without getting too far into that and confusing you, there's two kinds. We got fungal dominant soil, which you're going to find in your forest, right, where there's a lot of biomass leveled up. Lots of communication between these trees and the bushes and each other. They talk to each other. They tell, oh, I need this, you got that. Hey, oh, there's a fire over there. There's so much going on in those woods of communication between each other that people are just beginning to scratch the surface of understanding. So your forest is good for your bushes and trees. Your big open grass is good for your vegetables. Just to keep it simple. So you cover up your vegetable garden with straw. And you wouldn't believe how easy weeds come out when you have a nice layer of straw. They just pull right up. That does not happen on compacted soil. I feel bad, I'm just tromping down this, right? Compressing the soil right here, it's all moist. So in your woods, or in your perennial berry bushes, berry fruit trees, you're adding mulch, wood chips, once a year, or maybe once every 2 years, depending on the depth. And then adding straw each year to your annual garden. Yeah, cardboard. So a lot of people like to do the cardboard to try to get rid of grass. If you want to do that, you can. I wouldn't, personally. A lot of people would say, hey, yeah, it works, you can. Go ahead and do that. But it can also grow again. So if I want to get rid of grass, I'll just get rid of the grass. And I'll cut it out. And if you can get a sod remover, those machines, cut it out, roll it up, give it to somebody who needs it, even better. So we're always trying to stack functions in permaculture. We're always looking at needs and yields analysis. What do I need? What do you need? How can I help you? There's always that relationship thing going on. stacking functions, how much potential is there in my current level of energy? How can I share it with others? How can we maximize the use of our current energy at hand? So Tag mentioned this is a great thing, you know. If Graham and I were to come back, how many people could we help on that one visit? Because we're here for Tag's visit. But if we came back and people knew, we could stack functions and help as many people as we possibly could. And one person would take the bill, thank you, Tag. So that we can disseminate as much information through as much land as possible. Stacking functions. Which kind of brings me to the ethics and principles of permaculture. And I don't have them all memorized. You can pull them up on your phone, I know, right? So there's a lot of these. These are principles to live by, where it's like, as a permaculturalist, we have these, but we also utilize them just in our life. Because everything you learn in permaculture is a way to live by. It's kind of like this here tattoo on my arm is the yamas and niyamas. They're observances and abstinences, ways to live. Brahmacharya, don't take too much. Satya, truth, tell the truth. Things like this, just very basic things. We also have this kind of model in permaculture. Right? We want to equal share. Earth care, people care, equal share. There's always these intrinsic relationships. We're not taking too much. We're not giving less. We're working to maximize things together. Isn't that nice? Back to the vegetable garden. So, conjunction gardens. I had lost my job. I was like, okay, fell in love with the farmer. Let's plant some vegetables. And we planted vegetables. Right, we had a 150 by 50 feet garden, full of 126 varieties of plants. And I started selling vegetable bags to people. $25, $5 for delivery, or you come pick it up at my house in Calgary, because I'm living in Calgary with my 2 kids. And a lot of people jumped on board. And we were able to keep ourselves afloat through that summer and the following summer, selling vegetables by the bag. And we would just stuff it with however much stuff. There's sometimes 30 pounds of food in that bag. We weren't counting it or weighing it. We weren't washing it. It was covered in dirt, and it had everything on it. So if you got your beet, it was pulled out of the ground, covered in dirt, full of leaves, in the bag. And why do we do that? Because the soil is going to keep it crisper, fresher, longer. And that microbial health is going to interact with that person. They're going to create a connection with their food, because now they have to figure out what to do with it. And a lot of people had no idea. They're like, whoa, what do I do? And it's like, figure it out. I'm not here to teach you that. A lot of people wanted me to. But I didn't want to become like the personal trainer that I was, creating programs for people and spoon feeding them with how to get better, and then they do nothing. Right? So I didn't want to just say, oh, this is what you do, because then they didn't take any initiative to figure it out themselves. I could make suggestions. So I tried to do that. It was like, here's my Instagram post. Boom. This is what's in the bag this week. Da 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 da. Steam your greens. Put lemon juice and garlic on your beet greens. You know, I'd throw in those ideas every once in a while, but I would hope that people would take the initiative to start looking it up themselves. And people that didn't want to do it fell off, and that was fine with me. Because we don't have to resonate with everybody, right? We don't have to agree on everything. And that's another thing I think about what we're stepping into is it's okay to have different opinions. We can still be friends. We don't have to think the same way, and we shouldn't. That's what diversity is all about. So diversity between the people is as equally important as diversity on the ground with the plants. And we can respect and honor people for their decisions, for wherever they're at, and not force our way. Coming back. So these sorts of things come from my yoga background, right? I've been teaching the mindset training and all that sorts of things all along. So Conjunction Gardens grew and grew for 3 years. I planted an orchard last year. Huge orchard. And then I broke up with my man. And I had to say bye to all of it, which was heartbreaking, but you know what happens. So I'm planting another one at my parents' house, and this one is going to be the legacy for my family. My parents have 9 acres just south of town. They have 2 houses that are joined on 9 acres of land. It's an ICF house. So if anybody's familiar with that, it's like insulated concrete form. 5 degrees in the basement, even in minus 50. Wide open prairie. Beautiful house. Rocky Mountains the whole way. So when I get back to Calgary from here, all my trees are coming. And I got 30 fruit trees and bushes to be putting in the ground. I'm fortunate enough that my sister's husband is a big, burly, helpful dude, and he's going to be taking an auger and drilling all my holes while I'm here, which I'm very blessed for. We're expanding the annual garden so that I can put in some of those perennial, concentric medicine gardens so that we have these healing plants there all the time, forever. And then the holes, we followed the topography line from the rain coming off the house. We got a trench, self-watering system. My mom's 80 years old, and she can't wait to be watering with buckets. She's a force. Her mom lived to be 99. Good genetics. So it's going to be great to be planting that again. I'll get a little bit into some planting concepts. When we're planting a tree, we don't just take a tree and stick it in the grass. Why not? I already taught you. Why would you put a tree in bacterial dominant soil? You want fungal dominant soil, like the forest floor, with lots of mycelia, lots of connectivity between other plants. Lots of biomass, which is the leaves and the branches and all the things that have fallen for years after years. Think about how light and fluffy that earth becomes and all the space between. So it's very different than this sort of situation here. And I put the tree in the ground, and then I think about the associations of that tree with other plants. There's layers in a food forest. We've got the canopy layer, sub-canopy layer, shrub layer, herbaceous plants, the woody plants. We've got ground covers, tubers, and vining plants. So when you plant a food forest, you want all those layers vertically and horizontally considered. You want as much species diversification in a small space as you possibly can. How many trees did you plant on your acres per acre? Right?
Upwards of 200, like on a quarter acre.
Hear that? 200 plants on a quarter acre. You don't need a huge amount of land for a food forest. 1 acre for a family is tons of land. So you don't need to go super, super far. If you are, there's other wonderful permaculture solutions for that. Agroforestry. Is anybody familiar with agroforestry principles? Or eco-buffers? So there's tree buffers. I don't know, in Canada, this was paid for in the 60s by the government. They give us 5 species of trees, and everybody was given trees to plant to protect them from wind and create barriers. I'd like to change policy in Canada so that that's edible food. And it's possible, and I'm working on it. So with agroforestry principles, we're doing a similar thing. We're looking at broadacre farming land. We're reading the topography, assessing where the water is. How can we best utilize the shape of the land, plant along it, because the water will traverse that same path, self-water our gardens for us. Then we could take rows. We can do alley cropping, edible tree rows that your cattle walk through. There's plans where we run the animals in a certain order. Right? We let the little baby cows come in. They get the best, and then mama can come in, and everybody else can come in. And then maybe we have sheep or goats, and they're going to come in and they're going to eat all the woody plants that are really annoying to us. And then we're going to have the fowl come in, or the poultry, or any kind of birds. They're going to come poke everything and eat all the seeds that have been dropped, and they're going to scratch and they're going to move everything around. So we look at the relationships between the animals in how we run them through our systems. So say we have like a row of trees, a row of whatever, oats and clover, and then another row of trees. We can run them through there. We can have electric fencing to move them through there. And then we'll move them 2 days later, and they'll move over here, and then over here. So we create these rotational grazing plans so that we're not allowing our cattle or our animals or livestock to be doing this. Compacting the ground until there's no grass, there's open soil, and then we end up with thistles, which are only there to heal the earth, and dandelions. So these are primary pioneer species. And we're always looking at succession. So plants are there for a reason. The dandelions and the thistles are telling you your soil is compact. I have a big taproot. I'm really trying to break this up for you. So once those disappear, they've done their work, and it'll go up in the next stages of succession. And then you'll start to get more native prairie grasses, different types of grasses. Once that's happy and the biomass is good and I'm undisturbed, I'm going to start to create woody plants and herbaceous species and medicine. And we start to get those really nourishing, diverse species that our ancestors learned how to use to heal us. And then that's going to go higher up, and then bushes are going to grow, right? Because they're going to have so much more biomass. The wind is going to blow things, and it's going to build up and up and up, and then you get a bush. And then it's the tree, right? But they're leafy species like these. And then everything's going to go towards your more coniferous plants eventually. So the states of nature are always trying to work their way up to this forest, which essentially, eventually, and you'll see them around here, and Tag's got it on his land, where there's really virtually nothing growing on the forest floor anymore. Very small amount of species are, super high acidity. Lots of mushrooms are super happy there, lots of shade. But the canopy has now closed in, so only certain things can grow. So we can work with succession and this where we want to be in succession, right? If I want to take it back a bit, I'm like, whoa, I don't want this, unproductive forest floor. I want to be able to plant some fruit trees here. Then you're going to have to start selecting the wood out of there and utilizing the lumber so that you can open up your canopy, let more light in, and you can go backwards in succession. So this is how we can work with the land and what we would like to see on our land in a respectful and relational way. There we go. I haven't taken a deep breath for... You should all do that. 1, 2, 3. In through your nose, out through your mouth. You should do that often. With a sigh, too. Because the vagus nerve, from our brain to our tailbone, vibrates when we go, It does. And it causes us to relax. And it puts our nervous system at ease. What's next? What time do I got? Anybody? What's that?
Plenty of time.
Plenty of time. Are you all enjoying this? Is this helpful? Okay. Great.
So, I'm really concerned about energy efficiency. Can you speak to zoning and how, when we're establishing our homesteads, that we can use the zone to gain that energy efficiency?
Great question. Thank you so much. So she wanted me to talk about zones and energy efficiency. So in permaculture, work is a failure in design. So we want to minimize, how many steps it's going to take me to the kitchen, to the chicken coop, or to the compost, every day. And we want to consider, okay, we don't want to have the compost super far away so that in the winter we're like trudging through the snow and things like that, right? So we're placing our elements with that in mind, the most efficient use of our energy. So we work in zones. Zone 0 being me, in my body, on my body, in my home. Our home is our zone 0, our body is our temple, and we look at that. Zone 1 is directly outside our house. So what do we want to have there? We want to have the things that we want to cook with all the time. We want to have our greens really nice and close so that we eat them. Even better if you can look out your kitchen window and see your garden, because then you'll keep an eye on it. And you'll know if your livestock, or if like you've got deer coming in there, which is okay, you know. If you have the land, plant for them too, because they're going to fertilize your garden for free by pooping. You say thank you, and they're beautiful. So just plant extra if you can. So zone 1, you got your greens. You're going to have your rainwater capture because it's coming right off your house. So any emergency water reserves that you might want to have, usually there. You could have your compost there, nice and close to the house. Compost shouldn't smell if you're doing it right. And there's a lot of different kinds of compost that you can choose from. You could have a barrel that you turn. You could do thermophilic composting, which requires that you turn. You can use machines too if you like. There's vermiculture, which you can use worms. So I do this in Canada over winter even. I'll bring my worms in, and they're not earthworms that you would put in the ground. They're Amazonian red wigglers. They don't live in soil. They eat your kitchen scraps. They poop out, and they give us castings. And you can dilute them with water and feed your houseplants. And it's liquid gold. I drank it once. It put me in heavy fevers. Could have been healing me. Who knows? It was a dare. I did it. It's fine. I'm alive. So then we have zone 2. So zone 1, you're visiting every day. Zone 2, maybe every other day. And you could put your chickens probably in zone 2. It's not that far from the house, right? And every property we kind of look at and analyze and outline for you. This is your zone 2. This is your zone 3, 4. Okay, so the time that we take to get to zones and how often we visit them is what is the signifier of what the zone is. So zone 3, maybe you're going once a week. Zone 4, maybe once a month. Zone 5 is like your outlying wooded areas if you're lucky enough to have somewhere to have a walking path go through. Which I did yesterday at a fellow named Steve's house. He's built an orchard over 40 acres with a walking path, 2,500 tree varieties for the deer and the wildlife. Not even for him. He's just trying to call nature in. Like, that's a true land steward. That's what we're teaching people how to be. How to steward the land. And I brought in that language into Food Forest Abundance last year. I was like, I can't call these people clients. That's just dirty to me. They're not my clients. They're stewards. I'm teaching them how to be stewards. And we changed the language of the organization to call people stewards. And it's an amazing relationship that develops over time where you start to learn and you want to know more. You want to know more. It's a beautiful thing. So does that answer your question on energy? Yeah, you're welcome. And we're also looking into alternative energy sources, of course. So getting completely off-grid, amazing. Talk to Tag for solar modular systems, because that's amazing. Yeah, you got a question there.
Yes. So I know we don't have this problem as much here in Kansas, except for certain areas, but like my boyfriend and his family live down in Florida where they have, the manicured lawns and all that stuff. He got his sister set up with like one garden bed, and she just turned the place into like last year, and she turned the place into like a permaculture fest in like less than a year with just a quarter acre. But I know there's a lot of concern about like the crap sprayed on the lawns and stuff like that, and like for people that are actually able to, with their zoning and stuff, turn their yard into more of a permaculture, even with a small space and a more obviously there's like the forever chemicals that are sprayed and stuff like that, but like what would you recommend to start remediating that and be able to use what you got if you got nothing else?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you didn't hear the question, it's about remediation techniques and what can we do to remediate from things like sprays and poisons and whatnot in different scenarios. So there's a lot of different elements to that question that you asked me, and good news is we've already figured out the bacterial and fungal species to digest glyphosate. It's already out there. So we already have the solution, which is amazing, right? So we can create compost, we can drop it in bags, we can put it in the river, and it can filter through, and we can clean the glyphosate out of the water. We can create compost teas, we can use Korean farming techniques, which is like a fermented sort of compost tea, pour it on the ground. It's the microbiology that's doing it. The microbiology can eat it, digest it, transmute it, and create nutritious food that has no trace of it already. So that's one way. We can create cover crops to do the work for us. We can give it time. It's not there forever. Nothing is forever. So that's great news. And what I love about that question is that it really jazzes me. So I studied microbiology with Elaine Ingham. I took the foundational microscopy courses. Got the crazy microscope. Holy moly, looked at a pinprick and saw what's going on in there. They got personalities. It's like a little city. You look in there, it's like, holy smokes, what's going on? They're moving around in different ways, and I was like, hey, that's me. We're all, it's just like getting smaller and smaller. There's no difference between that and this, really. I'm the mover and shaker. Okay, there's that difference, right? Between the cosmos and the earth. We are the ones making the substantial change here. Really? But it's interesting to see. So these relationships in the microbiology, that's what will fix us and heal us and things like that. So antibiotics, they're killing all the bacteria. Just saying. Antibiotics have a place and time, but if you do have to take them, make sure that you're renewing your biology in your guts with probiotics. Do it anyways. Ferment foods. Lactobacilli. Keep your gut good. Eat fermented foods every day if you can. So that's even another part of permaculture. There's so much, of course, I can't even get to everything. But fermenting foods, these practices has been replaced by pickles with vinegar. It's not the same thing. Not even close. Get yourself a crock, shred up some beets, put some brine on it, put a plate, put a weight, forget it. A month later, you've got your own medicine. You've made your own probiotics. Kimchi, even better if you like hot food. Yeah, so that's your yield, right? What to do with your yield. If you start to plant a food forest, you've got so much stuff. It's okay, let it build soil. It's going to drop on the ground. If that bothers you and it's going to bring bugs, okay, then don't. Freeze it. Can it. Get your friends over. Share it. Trade it. And a beautiful idea I'd like to bring to this festival is that plant sharing. You have a festival that you're all meeting here every May, right? Everything's just starting. You can get all your cuttings. You can get all the little plants coming up. You can divide up your perennials that are getting too big, put them in pot, bring them here, start doing plant trading. Make it free. Hey, I know you got the seed exchange yesterday, so that's an excellent start. And you just got to stack functions and add more elements onto that. So I got just 10 minutes, so I'd like to, if anybody else has any questions, I'd like to answer.
You were mentioning you'd like it to be a forest floor. We're from Colorado. How would you build the soil up in like a high desert if they don't have the forest?
Forest? Yeah, so in the high desert, and of course it's always like it depends, right? So permaculture, people ask me a question, I say it depends. So she's in Colorado. Of course I'd have to know, her topsoil, how thick her topsoil is. She's saying it's very arid where she is. She's probably high mountain. You've got like crazy weather patterns and things like that. So hugelculture is a nice way to build up on things. So but you said you didn't have a forest. You could still bring in wood and you can create. So if I have a really compacted situation with low topsoil, I'm going to have to build up from that. I'm going to want to use wood chips. I'm going to want to use whole logs. I'm going to create mounds. I'm going to create the earth that I don't currently have. You know, maybe I can have a machine come in there and break it up. It depends on your situation, what you have access to. But building up with hugelkultur is probably what you'd be doing in your situation, is what I'm guessing. And the reason why I also recommend that is because all that wood matter in those mounds is going to help retain water. So even in your raised bed situations, you don't fill those up with soil. Like, that's expensive. You fill it at the bottom with wood and wood chips, and then put the soil on top. You're actually going to have a better situation than if you had 100% most beautiful soil ever. You're actually going to be better off saving that soil and just keeping it on the top. And if you ever move dirt or soil on your land, just keep that top bit somewhere special. Okay, if you're ever digging ponds or anything like that, save that topsoil. It's precious. And limited resource, but we can make more of it. Does that help? Anybody else? Yes, Tag. You don't need a microphone.
My name's Stuart. One statement. One, I'm super happy to know that you respond to dares. But you respond to dares. I will keep that in my pocket.
Oh, no.
It's all bad.
There's trouble.
You spent some time in Kansas. Can you talk a little bit about our climate? Have you observed any difference here? Give anybody some generalized advice for this climate here. There's a lot of people from it.
Yeah, you betcha. Kansas is beautiful. Your species diversity is huge, right? So you gotta walk your lands, you gotta look. There is so much diversity here already. You guys have berries, gooseberries, and currants, and oh my gosh, you have so many different things that are just growing wild. And your tree seedlings, like, everything is so lush and so beautiful. You could just grab it, you know, move it places. Start looking for things where they're growing. It's like, oh, there's a tree seedling. Grab that and go put it somewhere. Do I want privacy somewhere? Where can I plant this where I can create some privacy? Where do I have too much wind and I can plant this to protect me from the wind? Because wind is a huge thing here. Which kind of brings me back to the question that was over here about sprays and things like that too, where you can utilize plants to stop the sprays from coming on your land. So looking at your perimeter, okay, and this brings me to ArmaGarden. Don't YouTube, don't Google this. I have to buy this domain today. Don't, please, because it'll make it more expensive for me. ArmaGarden, right? So if anybody wants to chat about this today, please come at me. The idea is, I'm working with the combat wave. Ow, ow! We're going to be creating gardens for men and women in the different stages of life. And we're also going to be looking at perimeter security and things like that. So if you want to talk about that, please get at me, because I'll be designing that starting on the plane on the way home. Yes! What else can you do here? Well, you got, yeah, the wind is a major thing that you want to pay good attention to.
Clay soil.
What's that?
Clay soil.
Clay soil, yes, good one. For sure.
No rain, I think you guys have, right?
There's a lot of that. So like the biomass buildup, the Korean farming techniques to create space. So it's like the microbiology that's creating the space in your soil. Some of you are going to have rippers come in there. If you've ever heard of keyline, you can start to do that sort of thing. Cover crops, building above with hugelkultur, which you've already done, which is excellent techniques. Storing water, really important. So if you have the ability to have a pond on your land, high up, we want to grab water from the highest point in the land, spread, and soak it in. So that's another element. Sorry, you had it. Is that good? We have another question. Or should I keep going?
What would be the advantages or disadvantages of using a fruiting or nutting tree in a silvopasture situation?
I don't know if there's any disadvantages to using a fruit or nut tree in a silvopasture situation. Especially if you have pigs and things like that, you want them eating their acorns right before you slaughter them. There are different techniques. I would suggest looking at Mark Shepard. He does an agroforestry for farmers course. He's excellent here in the U.S. Michigan, Missouri, Wisconsin. He's awesome. But there are different techniques that you have to think about with animals, you know, like the lower branches, you know, you either let them eat them off, or you might need to protect your bark and things like that. There are no disadvantages to growing food, even if you're not eating it. It's not all about us, right? Other things can eat it too, and ultimately it's going to build soil for you. The biomass, every time you get your winter, it's just going to fall to the ground. And it's going to create more nutrient density in the ground, because the plant will take up the nutrients out of the soil, thanks to the microbiology, and bring it up inside the plant. So say I take in a lot of calcium, I drop it back to the earth. So we can plant for what we need too, right? We can plant, if we have a plant that's really high in something, we can make sure that we add it to the land by planting that, instead of this synthetic isolation business, which we know doesn't work. The relationships aren't there. It's not cohesive. How are we doing?
You're doing great.
Thank you.
There's another lady right here.
Okay.
You talked about like planting trees, and then grazing the animals. I'm envisioning planting a tree out in a pasture, which is not the right environment. So how do you do that?
Yeah, great question. So trees out in the middle of the grass, I'm like, don't do it. But yeah, do it, actually, yeah. I took it back. Do it. Plant the tree wherever you need to. So you can add mulch around the base of the tree. Don't let it touch the trunk. Don't choke it out. Don't let it, right? We got to create a little bit of a divot so that the water can go in and stay there. And we can create rotting situations if the mulch is too close to the bark, so don't do that. I'm glad you mentioned this, because I didn't really talk about guilds. And guilds are, so we're going to have a ground cover on the bottom, and that's going to make sure that we can, you know, trap as much rainwater in there and bring in the sun. We can use a nitrogen fixing plant like clover, is excellent. Things we can mow over. We can mow over mint. You could have a field of mint if you wanted to. Like, there's no rules on this. And then we're going to have things that ward off pests and disease. And those can be modified for the tree species as well. You can choose certain plants to do that. You're going to want to plant maybe borage if it's an apple tree, because borage is going to attract the bees. So we have pollinator plant species that we plant in a guild. And a guild is a relationship of these plants. And I touched on it briefly near the beginning, where you're planting, you know, different types of plants with different functions. Okay, maybe something that creates this warding off effect of deer, like garlic. They don't like this. They don't want to smell like that. So we're going to put garlic maybe on our drip line, where the tree drips onto the ground. We're going to have the borage, like I said. Comfrey, yes. Biomass. So that's going to be like a building biomass situation. Anything. Tobacco was great for building biomass. It just grows like crazy. You just chop the leaves. Chop and drop. Don't forget it. You don't have to pick up stuff. We're not English gardeners. We don't need a big pretty place. We need to build soil. So you can like chop things and just leave them where they are. You don't have to be hauling everything to the compost and making compost unless you want to. When I'm in the garden and I'm weeding, which is an interesting concept to begin with, because a weed is defined as any plant that's out of place. Like, what is that? Right? It's a word and a concept created by the fertilizer companies. Rewire the brain. All right. Any other questions? Did I get to the end of that one? Yes.
Do you have any resources that you can think of for people who don't get to live out in the land, who live in the city and have a small space? So we're limited in what we can do in that small area.
Yeah, you betcha. You can do a lot even in an apartment, right? You can do a pot on a windowsill, a pot on a patio. You can do microgreens even without the sunlight factor. There's not a lot of people that live in a building with no windows. And you don't need direct sun. So microgreens is a good one. You can do things like regrow your celery in a cup of water. You could regrow an avocado plant. You could regrow your onions, right? You can chop them and put them in water and they'll regrow. So there is a ton of interesting techniques that you can do even in an apartment. And I definitely encourage you to try. You can do the vermiculture thing too. If you're not even growing food and you just want your plants to do well in your place, have a vermiculture compost underneath your kitchen sink. Put all your scraps in there. Get your fertilizer, liquid gold. Maybe drink it if you want to. Yeah, there's other things you can plant, like, edible flower garden. Beautiful. Cut flower garden. Medicine garden. There's so many different themes of gardens. But you're going to have to contact me at permaculturecanada.world to find out. Thank you all. I have cards here if you're interested. Come grab a card. Come talk to me. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lindsay.
To my farm here in the coming months or however long it takes. So if you guys have an interest in meeting with them, they'll be here anyway. So make sure you let them know that.
Did you guys hear that? These two are going to be out at Tag's place periodically over the next several months. So if you coordinate with him and want to get to know them better, ask him more intimate and detailed questions, Tag has offered that you can do that. So if there's anyone who wants to do that, go talk to the guy in the yellow shirt. That one, the steward. Or Lindsay or Graham. They're here, I'm sure, the rest of the day. So again, let's give another warm round of applause for Lindsay. Thank you so much. Go on and get your lunch. It's that time. The next class, I believe, is at 1:30. It's going to be with